Welcome, everybody. We have theme music. We have a logo. I've got a big microphone. It must mean we're hosting a talk show. Are we excited about this? I'm excited about this. My name's Michael Akin. I'm going to be one of your hosts here today. We're really excited to try out this new format, the ITGA late night / lunchtime talk show. We've got really phenomenal guests planned for this. We're going to make it really interactive because I know the last thing anyone needs in their life right now are more Zoom meetings. And they certainly don't need more Zoom meetings that are all about lecturing the people on the screen. So we're going to try to have some fun today, break some new ground, and have a real good discussion. Does that work for everybody? So a couple ground rules. We are recording this because much like a talk show, we need the studio audience, and then we need to record it and share it with a group later. So we'll be posting this through ITGA channels later. You are more than welcome to come on screen and on audio if that is comfortable for you. We will be leaving the chat open throughout, and we encourage really active engagement. When we get into the dialogue with our guest, if there's something you want to ask about, drop it in the chat, and we're going to try really hard to inject that into the discussion in real time to make sure this is beneficial for all of you. As we get started, we would love everyone to use the chat feature just to introduce yourself, your name, who you represent, if you're representing an institution or a city or a civic entity, and where you're located. That'll give us a good sense of who's in the room with us here today. Does that work for everybody? So what I'm going to do to kick us off, we want to use this hour really, really well. I'm going to bring in our first guest. You know her, you love her. She's the ITGA Executive Director, Beth Bagwell.
Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody here today. As Michael said, my name is Beth Bagwell, and I'm the Executive Director of ITGA, and I'm super excited about this inaugural launch, and thank you for joining us today. The International Town and Gown Association offers resources, professional development, and many networking opportunities to leaders in the campus community space to address common challenges and opportunities that ITGA members encounter. And this year's focus group discussion, co-facilitated by Link Strategic Partners and ITGA, you told us that you wanted more robust sharing mechanisms and networking, and we listened. So a little history. In January of 2021, we launched the first Town Gown Turnaround series with moderator Sarah Bloom. The goal was to strengthen partnerships with city and university stakeholders. Although COVID brought many challenges in campus communities, our focus started with business districts, enhancing downtown areas and retail sales. We eventually branched into other topics based on the suggestions of participants, but this was our initial focus. Now that Sarah took on a new challenge, I approached ITGA board members Michael and Krisan for new ideas to replace the Town Gown Turnaround series. As thought leaders and consultants to ITGA, with many connections outside of our membership, we were delighted when they came up with this brilliant idea for the talk show with assistance from Poppy and Woody. So Michael, I'm going to turn this back over to you to introduce everyone.
Thank you, Beth. Really good job there. If you look in the chat, we have got Colorado State. We've got Baldwin Wallace University from Ohio. We've got Kentucky State, Union College in Schenectady. We've got folks from University of Alabama, Florida Atlantic. We got the University of Georgia, University of Pittsburgh, another University of Florida. We got some good representation here, a real national group, and we are excited about that. So let me introduce our co-hosts for this series. We're going to be bringing in guests and having good discussions throughout these quarterly experiences. I'm so honored to be joined by my co-host, Krisan, and she's going to come now and introduce herself. Krisan, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm just so pleased to be here with you today and having all of you join us on this kickoff lunchtime conversation. As Beth mentioned, I'm a member of the board, but I'm also the campus planning director for DLR Group. And that does give me a great chance to really be involved in town gown communities and conversations from Florida to Alaska. And I love anything that really talks about how do programs, services, and people really come together to reflect the places where they live and to honor and bring those all forward together. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Krisan. Poppy, can I go to you next? Poppy, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. My name is Poppy Humphrey, and I'm the Director of Standards and Accountability, working to the fabulous Michael Akin, based over here in our UK branch, Link UK branch. And prior to working at Link Strategic Partners, I worked for nearly a decade in town gown arena over here in the UK, with oversight for nearly 100,000 students in the fair city of Manchester, England. And during that time worked really, really closely with the ITGA. And it was always so interesting for us to see all of the parallels between the US and the UK with some of the issues that we're facing. So absolutely delighted to see you all, and really can't wait to get stuck in and have a fantastic hour or so with you all. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Poppy. Also one of the co-founders of the UK Town Gown Association, UKTGA, which grew out of the great work of ITGA. So excited to have you here. And last but certainly not least, our final co-host here, Woody Giles. Woody, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. This is my first time on a talk show, so super excited to be here. I'm Woody Giles, Senior Campus Planner with DLR Group. So I work with Krisan on campus plans for institutions across the country, but my background is in both campus planning and city planning. So ITGA is my happy place where those two worlds come together. So super excited to be with y'all today.
We were really trying to lean into this talk show theme, and we were trying to get a band. We were going to have like stand-up comedy, but there are certain budget constraints as a nonprofit that's putting all of its resources to its members. So what we came up with was a poll. That's exciting, right? We're gonna go to a poll now after this commercial break, and Woody's going to tee it up. So Halloween was Monday, Woody. I think you have a question about that, my friend.
Let's take a look. So
seamless. So we just need you to click.
How strong of opinions we've got here.
Ooh, we got some early adopters for peanut butter cups. Other is making a strong comeback. M&M's getting zero love for M&M's in the chat. Anything chocolate, this is good. Candy corn has got one person that's like, I am all in on candy corn, which is great. Everyone had a chance to vote? Okay.
I think we got everybody.
We got a winner here. I'd love to get a couple of thoughts from the other category. What are the ones we didn't put on this poll that we should have? What are the others that you like? Come off mute or drop them in the chat. Skittles. Excellent. That's a good one. The other way to ask this question is, what candy did you take out of your children's buckets so that you could eat it for the rest of this week? Twizzlers, nerds. This is great. We got one other. Whoppers. Absolutely. Woody, we got one more question, right?
Yes. Let me bring up our second question.
Milky Way. Excellent. So this question, Woody, how would you describe the community or institution that you're joining us from? Like to get a sense here. Large urban, somewhere in between, small rural, a lot of somewhere in between. It's good. This is good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Perfect. Woody, did you get what you needed out of these polls?
Yeah, let me share the results everybody can see here.
Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yeah, a lot of in-betweens.
I love it. Thank you, sir, very much. We want to try and each time we come together, ask some stuff that gets us a little bit active and engaged. We also, for ITGA, like to get a sense of who's joining us, where are they coming from, and how do we make sure that our programming reflects the needs of our members. I think sometimes in the town gown space, there can be this sense that cities and colleges work together really well, and that can be really true. A lot of colleges aren't in cities. A lot of colleges are in other parts of the country, and that works really well too. So how do we have these discussions that take in everything that we're trying to do here? So we'll go ahead and take that poll down now, and we are going to transition into our second guest, where we're going to spend the bulk of today. And as we introduce this guest, the guests we're bringing onto these shows have bios that if we were to read them, it would take the rest of the time in our meeting. And so what we are going to do is drop the bio into the chat so you can read about all of our guests and all of their glory as we're having the discussion, so that we jump right into it. And we've had really great discussions with the guests about how interactive we want this to be. So if something's resonating, fascinating. If you have a question, if you have a comment, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll try and bring those into the discussion. And we're also going to leave lots of time for you to ask our guests questions directly, either in chat or on screen as we continue. Does that work for everyone? So without further ado, it is my absolute and distinct pleasure to bring in our first inaugural guest of the ITGA Late Night Lunchtime Talk Show, Dr. Colette Pierce Burnette. Dr. Burnette's bio is being dropped into the chat. She is currently the president and CEO of Newfields, which she will describe. It is an art center. It's an institutional center. It's a community center. It's a cultural center in the center of Indianapolis, Indiana. And most recently, she was president and CEO of Houston-Tillotson University in Austin, Texas, a wonderful historically Black college and university. And during her tenure there, she worked extremely hard to, in many ways, reintroduce the city of Austin to the wonderful college that is HTU and introduce HTU to the college and university. And we're so excited to have her here today. Dr. Burnette, welcome.
Oops, I almost made it by talking without saying you're on mute, ma'am. Thank you, Michael, and everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I don't know, am I the band or the stand-up guy? Or which part of the late night am I for this particular piece? I want to give a special shout out to Sonia from Kentucky State. My husband is actually doing some work at Kentucky State right now. So I'm super excited to see a sister institution here on the late night show.
Dr. Burnette, when we were putting this together and thinking about who we wanted our first speaker to be, there was unanimous agreement that you were just the perfect first speaker. And I'm so blessed that you agreed to do this. And there was some real intentionality behind it. Often at ITGA, we talk about that intersection, right, between campus and community, between town and gown. You have really reached the pinnacle, the top job in a variety of different industries over your career that span town and gown. So I know everyone has the bio, but could you talk a little bit about your journey through those various industries and kind of how those have fit together?
Mm-hmm. I'm honored to be here, Michael. When Michael Akin asks you to do something, I don't think the word no appears in your vocabulary, so I'm honored to be here. I had a non-circuitous path to the presidency. I was corporate. I'm an engineer. I have an undergraduate engineering degree. So I worked at Central State University for a very long time as a part of the turnaround administration there. And then eventually, watch what you pray for. I've cared deeply about the Black college mission. So I ended up as the president of Houston-Tillotson, a small liberal arts school that's older than the University of Texas in Austin. So I see life as chapters and as assignments, and my assignment there was to integrate, like Michael said, an all predominantly Black college into a very prosperous, thriving majority city, Austin, Texas. I had a great journey there, but it was a lot of work because when I got there, the university was not recognized, sitting in the shadows of the state's flagship institution, all things Longhorns. And even though we were older than the University of Texas, we were not respected. So I went on a rampage after the 8th Uber driver did not know that there was a university there. And the university sits like right central Austin. It's right downtown on the second most valuable property in the city, because when the people came to found a Black college, they were looking for areas to build a college on, and that area was hilly, so the land was cheap. And now we overlook the city. So a lot of work went into forging partnerships, relationships, et cetera. And at my retirement, it was very clear that when someone says the university in Austin, now they say which university. And that's when I knew that my assignment was over. Now I'm at a cultural institution, Newfields, here in Indianapolis, Indiana, as the president and CEO. And we have the Indianapolis Museum of Art. It's 100 acres with the park, the Indianapolis Museum of Art, as well as beautiful internationally recognized gardens. So my assignment has flipped. There, I had to take a Black college and integrate it into a predominantly white community. And here, I'm at an elite, predominantly white membership, if you will, art museum, cultural institution, and integrated into communities of color. So town-gown relationships are still extremely important, and community engagement is a word that I find myself saying almost hourly, really, in my role as the president and CEO.
I love that, Dr. Burnette, and I'm seeing lots of nods. People are understanding why this is a great way to kick this off. You spoke a lot about the idea of partnerships. And I have found in my work in community engagement that the best partnerships respect which all parties are bringing to it, right? Partnerships can be exploitative or partnerships can be additive. As you've worked to create partnerships, often in spaces where there might be that power imbalance, how do you define partnership? What makes a good partnership?
So there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And to me, that really defines true partnership, going together. And if a partnership is not reciprocal, particularly from a university's perspective, then it's not sustainable. I'll just give a couple quick examples. We had a lot of employers who wanted to employ our students because that would have them to have a diversification of internships. However, they were unpaid internships. So we would have partnerships with corporations of unpaid internships. So the students really were not truly gaining, because being 45% first generations, our students need to be paid for internships, or they would opt to go and work at the mall where they would be paid, which was more realistic in their life at that time in their lives. So we actually started working just with partners who would offer paid internships. That's a reciprocal and sustainable partnership. On the other side of that, we are an investment, not a charity. Sometimes, particularly for small independent colleges, an investment in you is seen as a gift to you is seen as an investment, not seen as an investment. And I think a true partnership, you're investing in each other. So if it's not reciprocal, meaning that both aren't gaining something like any fruitful relationship, then it's not going to last. So every partnership that we entered in, we will be very clear up front that we are gaining something through this partnership, as well as the entity that we're working with is gaining something. And we were successful to build a lot of really good partnerships with very large industries there in the Austin, Texas area.
I'm sorry, Dr. Burnette, keep going.
Currently, in the position that I'm in right now at a cultural institution and higher education, we are a cultural institution. We are anchor institutions and we're cultural institutions. We build cultures, we build communities, hopefully building beloved communities. So here, many of the partnerships that I'm seeking now are those entities within the Indianapolis area that are serving with like missions. So another partnership is like missions. You surround yourself with people on the same mission as you are. So our mission is to enrich lives. So we're looking for nonprofit partners who work to enrich lives, which ironically are universities and colleges at the top of my list, because that's my comfort zone, finding my own tribe.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I'd love to unpack with you is when you think about it from a college or university standpoint, there are often kind of concentric circles of relationships that universities have. So when folks say community relations, often they mean the immediate adjacent off-campus relationship and how to mitigate quality of life issues related to that. Then there's the city or region or county that we operate within, and how are we part of that community as well. And then often there's the national dialogue where we're all holding individual spaces in the institutions that we are a part of. In your Houston-Tillotson role, how did you both kind of define those circles, and what did you do to make those connections intentional? Was there a relationship with the East Austin community, and what did that look like? And then I'd like to unpack some of the Austin level ones, but let's start kind of close to home.
Excellent question. So I learned a new term called the donut. And your community around you is the donut. You're in the center of the donut. So you have to think through, how big is your donut? At Houston-Tillotson, there was the smaller donut, which was East Austin, which was a highly gentrified area. And the university was the intellectual heartbeat, which we named ourselves. And if you say it enough times, it's other people start listening to you and saying it and believing it. So we branded ourselves as the intellectual heartbeat there as an anchor institution for East Austin, and for us to be honest brokers in very complicated conversations around race, or just, current topics that people are troubled by, because that's what universities, colleges and universities were originally defined as a part of our original mission, is to serve our communities, so to speak, and educate people and uplift people. So we began to define ourselves as that intellectual heartbeat, that anchor institution as a part of our elevator speech, our branding, et cetera. And that was really effective for us to gain respect there. And then that helped to stretch ourselves out into the greater Austin community as a viable member of the Austin community, and to continue to pound into what role we play in that greater community. So that donut term, the reason that really resonated with me is that it's exactly what you feel like you're like the center of a donut and you have these parameters around you. Now, and I know majority institutions, when they're located in a lower income community, work to say that they're going to service the surrounding community. It has to be intentional and it has to be real. It can't be to save the community around you, because people don't need to be saved. They need to be invested in and to be given opportunities. So that was something that we had to recognize there at Houston.
Dr. Burnette, I think we might have lost your connection here for just a second. So as your connection is coming back online, we'll remind folks that we're going to keep the chat open throughout. If you have a question, a comment, a thought, please feel free to drop it in. If you want to do that privately, you're also welcome to direct message any of the co-hosts and we'll inject that into the chat as well. I think we're uncovering some good ground here and we want to make sure this is answering some of your questions as we go. Dr. Burnette, it's like you've been on a talk show before. We went to commercial break and now we're back for the next part of our interview. That was perfect.
I went into cyberspace there for a second.
That was perfect. You were talking about partnerships needing to be real partnerships, needing to be intentional and not based on this idea that we are here to save or we are here to help. We are here to invest. We are here to open up opportunities and dialogue. Mm-hmm. Anything else you wanted to add to that thought? Because I know you got cut off.
Yes, the conclusion of that thought in my mind was town gown relationships are heart work. It's building that beloved community. That's my own personal branding, where it's work of the heart, and that's a part of not trying to save people. It has to be very intentional. It has to be very personable, and it has to be very real. So Dr. King made the beloved community concept of building beloved communities famous by using it in many of his speeches. And I think that universities and cultural institutions have a responsibility to be a part of that. That so many challenges that we have, particularly in our urban areas and also in our rural areas. And I think education is the great equalizer. So I'm very biased of that. I think education is what equalizes people to give opportunities for people to elevate their lives.
Dr. Burnette, I want to carry on that theme that you so eloquently outlined about Dr. King and beloved community. One of the things you did very early in your tenure is you invited, my words, you invited the outside world of Austin into your campus for a Sunday supper, a changemakers dinner, where you brought all these people in, many for the first time. You literally invited them to break bread and introduce them to a campus, a community, and to you. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that intentional work of relationship building, and if that paid off during your tenure, or how do you build into that space?
That's still paying off, and I have to give credit to Michael Akin and Link and Jevin Hodge and that team, because I attended one of their events through my sister, and I was super impressed with the moment of just bringing people into a space where they're not presenting, they're just bringing their humanity and in the positions that they're in, and change makers, movers and shakers, if you will, thought leaders in the community, and just say, come to my space, let's break bread together, let's introduce ourselves and start networking among ourselves. So I did it early on in my tenure with Michael's direction and guidance. And the reason I say that's still paying off is because someone that was there as a market president of Bank of America has made an introduction for me here to the market president here in Indianapolis. So they come, you just talk about your institution, you have a pause for the cause, if you will. Hey, while you're here, let me just tell you how wonderful we are. And then there's no agenda, but people then gravitate towards other trailblazers, other change makers, other people who are doing the intentional work, and they're sparks of fire. So I'm going to do the same thing here at Indianapolis at Newfields, because you have to call the invite list of people who don't generally talk to each other. You'd be surprised how many of your partners don't talk to each other. And then you have a convener. And once again, through partnerships, you go farther together. So that supper was very, very, very effective, and with no set agenda, but it gives you an opportunity to say, I want to be your friend. It's like taking a loaf of warm bread to the new neighbor. But you're the new neighbor, and you have everybody come over and have a piece of warm bread, and of course some wine and some other things on the side at the same time. So,
and I appreciate the shout out. Was not looking for that in answering that question, but I think one of the things that universities and cultural institutions do uniquely well is that power of convening. And we found even in the most antagonistic relationships, or the relationships where entities are unknown, that power of convening can be really, really strong. And there are moments in an institution's life where that power of convening has a bit of an excuse. We have a new president, we have a new this, we're opening a new building, we've got this new opportunity. It's an opportunity for people to kind of reset those expectations. One of the things that struck me about that dinner is we didn't set out to make this exclusive. And by the end of people coming, we had to start saying no because so many people wanted to go. And it was fascinating. The day of the event, the First Lady of Texas called and said, I'm coming. And that's when you say, okay, how many seats do you need? And it just became this thing that everyone wanted to be at. And then that night at the table that I was hosting, we had the First Lady of Texas, and we had an Obama administration appointee sitting one seat apart from each other. These are folks who don't have dialogues with each other. And it was all of a sudden a university that has created that convening, which I think was really, really important. Dr. Burnette, one more question on this idea of community, and I'm going to go to the chat here. That's the concentric circle. In Austin, I was really struck by the fact that you were brought in to co-chair a task force on equity with the mayor. You and the mayor were co-chairs at a moment when both locally and as a country and as a globe, we were having discussions that had been too often delayed or deferred. How did that come about, and what did it look like for a mayor and a university president to co-chair something in that moment?
Actually, that was in 2016, long before the brutal murder of George Floyd. There was a murder of a young man who was having a mental, a moment of breakdown. His mother called the police for help, and he was in the street with no clothes, and the police actually killed him. So it was a very jarring moment for the city of Austin, and this was long before George Floyd's murder. And the mayor decided to form a task force, and he called it a task force on institutional racism and systemic inequities in Austin. He was advised not to use the term racism, but he took a leap of faith and he called it what it was. And he asked myself and the superintendent of schools to co-chair that task force. It was a very life-changing for me in my own personal life, because I got to really see up close and personal how racism can get baked into systems and how it takes a lot of work to dismantle them. And as a university president, you don't have all the answers, and your institution doesn't have all the answers, but you want to lean in to try and work towards it. And I'm very proud of the work that we did. Many of the initiatives that came out of that task force really took roots, got legs, and made some impact with predatory lending. There were 5 components: finance, banking, and industry, higher education, K through 6, pre-K through 16, and housing, all the pillars that you could think are in life. So I'm very proud of that work there. I grew a lot as a part of that experience, and I really learned a lot about how you have to have leadership do that once again, that heart work.
Yep. So
when you get a group of C-suite executives together going through a courageous conversations training about your own personal reflections on race, it can change your perspective. And that started to alter the conversation on race there in Austin.
I appreciate that so much. I'm going to jump into the chat here. Ms. Sanders has asked a couple of great questions here, so I'm going to paraphrase them, but please jump in and do any follow-up here, Ms. Sanders. So Dr. Burnette, when you left HTU, who is now charged with carrying on the legacy you built with the community engagement? Not just the who, but what unit? Is it comprised of faculty and staff? It's a great question of how legacy continues.
Excellent. And my charge to my campus before the new president was named was to remind them that my name and face may be on a lot of things that happen in Austin, but it was not me. I mean, I'm a vessel. I live a vessel life. And I reminded them that for the next president to be successful, they have to continue the work that they're doing in their own individual units. So from the academic units, because I would, be out there forging a partnership with a Tesla or a partnership with a Google or a partnership with an Apple. And then the academic units have to pick up the baton and make it actually happen. Because if you don't pick up the baton and do the real work, I can do a nod and sign my name on an MOU and nothing happens, then it's not real. And it's not reciprocal. So that was my charge to the campus. So the short answer to that is everybody on that campus is responsible in building town-gown relationships. I encourage people to get on boards, to sit on commissions, and that work has continued and to continue to lift HT to that next level, because every leader reaches a plateau. And then the next person has to get on that plateau, and that's their platform to lift the institution to the next level. So we have a community engagement component there at Houston-Tillis University, but it's just like retention and it's just like recruitment. Everybody's responsible for retention and everybody's responsible for recruitment. And it's the same thing with community engagement, because when you have one unit that you say, those are the people that do our outreach, if we don't support those people and everyone is doing their part, then it's not effective.
Sonia, did that answer the question? Any follow-up you have to that? Go ahead.
No, it did. It answered it. Yes, most definitely. And I appreciate that. I definitely believe that it is the whole campus. And it just takes some while for some of the campus to get there. But I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Dr. Burnette, when you're talking about recruitment and retention and enrollment, we're working on a strategic plan right now for a university, and we've had this really interesting discussion of, is enrollment and retention a strategic planning goal, or is that the outcome that happens if you hit all your goals, right? Does it get named, or if we do all these other things right, our enrollment and retention heads in that direction? So it's interesting framing around that. I'm going to ask one more question here, and then I'm going to pause and go to the co-hosts to see what questions they might have. And again, keep this chat going. You went from higher ed, university president, named Austinite of the Year as you were leaving a very well-regarded, successful presidency. And then you said, I could retire, but what I'm going to do is jump feet first into a completely new and different industry and challenge and city, right? So as you've switched from the presidency of a campus community into an arts-based community in a completely new city, can you talk a little bit about, and I know you're early in your tenure, what you found as similarities between kind of campus and community and differences, and also how do you prepare yourself for that type of transition? You're going into a place that needs some forward momentum. How do you still yourself and get ready for that type of journey?
So I was retired for 31 days. I was retired for the whole month of July, so I'm one of those persons that did not do well. I announced my retirement early on in order for the university had an opportunity to do a full search to find someone to take my seat for me to pass the baton to. So I was thinking, I knew I wanted to do something different, and I knew I have a servant heart, so I really wanted to do something that was servant based. So there's no preparation for this. And I'm the first female and obviously the first African-American. I shouldn't say obviously, I'm the first female and the first African-American here at Newfields and this President and CEO position. So there is no preparation. I find myself learning a lot of new things. And when I was in the interview, when Newfields has, if you Google us, we had an unfortunate situation, which is race-based. So we became the poster child for racism in the arts space, in the arts world. Every entity, every sector has its challenges. It's America. So that really intrigued me. I really thought I could really get there and build relationships, et cetera. So I really wanted this job. So I started talking about all the similarities to sell myself as a university president into this role. I don't know if I really believed all of it. I was hoping it was real. And now that I'm in the seat, it is very real. There are a lot of similarities. Membership, recruiting members is like recruiting students. Maintaining your members for them to continue to be loyal to you is like getting students to graduation. A budget is a budget is a budget. Leadership is leadership. Cultural institutions are cultural institutions. Building partnerships and relationship with the community. I love Indianapolis. It's a great city. My husband loves Indianapolis because it has sports and nice golf courses. So it was easy to sell him on it. Professional sports. So there are so many similarities. The differences are the patronage. There is a difference in people who pay, and that is the goal, is to expose communities that don't feel welcomed in the Indianapolis Museum of Art, in our gardens, for whatever reason, to be able to make us welcome for all. And the definition of museums was recently reimagined, if you will. And there's a new definition of museums in August of this year. The International Council of Museums redefined museums of spaces of research, spaces of education, spaces of engagement, spaces of building, maintaining heritage and legacy to keep your excellent collection evolving. So one of the charges is to really, all of us on this call who work with diversity, equity, inclusion, access, belonging, civil rights, social justice, whatever it is, building relationships, town-gown relationships, there's always a rub between maintaining excellence and beauty and diversifying. So you have to really move bravely into that conversation that those two do live together, and actually they complement and define one another. And that's the beauty of something that's cultural. That's the beauty of working to enrich lives with exceptional experiences. In my case now, it's exceptional experiences with art and nature, and to be sure that all audiences are welcomed and all audiences are free to experience it through their subjective lens and their subjective way. And that is higher education. You don't tell students what to think, but you tell them what to think about. So you can't define for someone the kind of music or the kind of art that they love. Their soul will tell them that, but you expose them to all types for them to be able to pick the art and the music and the beauty, the nature that appeals most to them. But you want to open yourselves up for all to be able to experience it. So those are that, and that's what higher education is. Not everybody's going to be a business major. Not everybody's going to be an SGA. So you have all these opportunities and all these wonderful things, and even your community, you open it up for people to be able to use your facilities, learn in seminars, et cetera. So it's opening yourself up and blossoming. And that redefinition of museums was just, for me, it was an affirmation that I had, my 31-day retirement was, well earned. But then my next step was, that's definitely my next right assignment.
Sounds like a relaxing month where you got to relocate to a new city.
Right.
Dr. Burnette, we're going to turn to some of the co-hosts here who have questions. Poppy, I know you received one that you wanted to jump in on, and then we'll go Krisan and Woody. Go ahead, Poppy.
Thank you. So Dr. Burnette, I suddenly remembered that I've got a job to do here, but I was so transfixed by everything that you were saying. And thank you so much for sharing so eloquently and beautifully your experience. You've had a very distinguished career. Going back to your time at HTU, you've touched on the processes that you went through, not least the importance of partnership and how you made that work. What do you feel was the biggest lesson that you learned that you could share with us all during your time there? I'm sure that's a difficult question if you had to choose one, but we're gonna ask you to stick to one.
Yes, the most difficult, I think, is recognizing for people to let their guard down about preconceived notions of the institution. Like you have one experience and you think that is the experience with the institution. And that's something that minority serving institutions, predominantly historically Black colleges, really experience, where we have the same challenges that other small privates have, but ours seem to be so elevated. We have the same problems that other mid-sized state schools have, but ours seem to be so elevated and so amplified, and people just can't let their guard down to recognize that it's a beautiful place. And we have challenges just like everyone else. It's a challenging business model. It's expensive to serve people, low-income people. So it's a bad business model. So people don't realize that. So that was my biggest challenge, is to get people to see us as humans doing the right thing, and that we bring benefit to you. So once you get people, and that comes to having people come to your campus, I would, anytime a prospective donor, or anytime a prospective, in my role as friend raising and fundraising and building relationships, I would have lunch with them in the student cafeteria, because they get to see the students, they get to feel their energy, they get to see who they are. And surprising, and people were like, you can't do that, it's loud in there. The only time that it actually worked out well, but the only time I had a little anxiety was I had a series of some judges, county state judges, and they were coming for lunch with me. So we would go through the line in the cafeteria just with the students and everything, and then we would eat in the president's dining room, but we would not go in the president's dining room and have this formal service, et cetera, because it doesn't reflect who the population I'm serving. So we have all these judges, we meet in my office, we walk across the street to the cafeteria. I heard the music before they did. And it was Chicken Wednesday, and the students had a DJ in the cafeteria, and the music was just blaring. And I had a moment of panic. And I looked over, and one of the judges was going, as she was walking through, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. So my staff, especially my VP of advancement, my fundraiser, she was just going through like a moment of anxiety. But then after we got in the president's dining room, you could still hear the drums thumping a little bit, and it lasted an hour. It was really okay, because it's who we are. And we want you to understand, invest in who we are. Now, we don't go to the extreme, but we're still who we are. And just seeing the students in their natural habitat broke down those barriers of who people perceive we are. And when they were leaving, one of the judges said to me, you have some magic going on up here, because we're on a hill, Bluebonnet Hill. She said, you've got some magic going up here. And she said, and I think we could do some great things together. And that particular judge ended up becoming a state representative. She was an attorney at that time, but she ended up becoming a state rep. And that was really to the benefit of Houston-Tillotson.
I love that so much. And I'll just mention the dinner that Dr. Burnette talked about before, where she introduced HTU to all these people. That dinner was held in the student union / cafeteria. They didn't go to an off-campus ballroom. It was there. They converted the cafeteria, it was incredible, and served the cafeteria served the food, and it was still a very elevated, elegant dinner, but it was of the experience that I think was so much more real than going off campus somewhere and presenting a different aspect. Krisan, can I turn it over to you? You do so much in campus planning, etc. I know you got some stuff here. What questions do you have for our guests?
Well, being respectful of time, it's sort of a two-pronged question. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and thinking again about the two different experiences that you're having and how they might inform your strategies in each place. And so thinking about the invitational campus, more than bringing people for a meeting to campus, traditionally people think about partnerships and apprenticeships happening maybe off campus. I'm really curious if you had strategies for HTU where literally people came to campus to participate as partners in programs there. And then maybe the opposite side of that coin now at Newfields, if you're considering how you might be a host to engaged and service learning on your campus, because of course, we all know the mantra, learning happens everywhere. Right. And so I'd love to think about and hear your reflections on those two opportunities.
Thank you for asking. I'll start with Newfields first. I have as the president, I can comp certain activities, certain events. And there have been traditionally minority organizations who could not afford or did not perceive my campus, this Newfields campus, as a place where they can have a convening. So we've been reaching out, inviting people to have particular convenings on campus. Now I have an agenda also, another agenda in bringing people to the campus for them to see it. Because we're surrounded by trees, you can't really see what's in here. So once you get in, it's like an oasis, and people get in here like, oh wow, this is really nice. Houston-Tillotson was the same way. People come on campus. One Uber driver said, what is this place? I was like, it's a college campus. So people see it and they see it in a different way. At Houston Tillerson, another strategy was to open our spaces up for usage. We had been closed. In fact, the Austin Statesman had written a story about the university that's now facing outward as opposed to inward. Because when regentrification started happening, the campus had really closed in on itself to protect itself. And that was not, at some point, that was not working because we had to face outward to be able to say we are an anchor institution. So come to our campus. And then we would have things, for example, with the electric vehicles, there's an organization, I'm not going to get the name right, but it's a Black organization for all Black vehicle owners of electric vehicles, or people interested in electric vehicles. So they brought their cars on campus because we were trying to get students interested in positions at Tesla, which had just opened up a gigafactory there in Austin. And students couldn't see themselves working at Tesla. But then when they get to see the Tesla and the electric vehicle from an organization of people who look like them, it makes it more attainable and more realistic and more authentic. So we would have those kinds of things on campus. We could have taken them down to, where there's a track or somewhere, a fairgrounds or somewhere for them to be able to see and experience the cars, but it's better for them to come on campus and that. And also Apple, we forged a phenomenal partnership with Apple where they underwrite an African-American male teacher institute for Black men to become K-12 teachers because there's such a shortage. So Apple would come and do seminars, webinars with the faculty. They could have done it on the Apple campus, which is very fancy, very pristine, a lot of high tech, but they would come and they would do some there on their campus, but the majority of their work would be, they would bring their engineers out of California and also out of Austin to come and do webinars and teaching, how to use Apple equipment, so to speak, in the classroom for faculty, but also for these burgeoning teachers, for them to be able to have this hands-on experience. So an Apple is a very committed, very authentic, I found, and a very real partner. So who would think that Apple, a corporation, would partner with a small historically Black college in Austin, Texas? And that came from building relationships. And it didn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of curating, to use my art term world now. It takes a lot of curating of those relationships, but you have to be dogged, you have to be persistent, and you have to continue to be authentic. And if there's a person on each, for each party, if you will, that you find that person that really wants this to happen, you just keep chiseling away at it, and it eventually comes to life.
Krisan, that was a brilliant question, and Dr. Burnette, a great answer. Krisan, did you have a follow-up to that?
My answer wasn't brilliant.
It was a brilliant answer, Dr. Burnette.
Krisan was brilliant. I was great.
Brilliant all around.
Oh, I'm happy to cede some time over to Woody so he
Excellent.
can have more of a voice than asking Halloween candy.
Woody, please share a question, which I know Dr. Burnette will have an absolutely brilliant answer to.
Not that Halloween candy is not important, but I love how you were talking about the heart work of building relationships and partners. And so I was curious if you have an example from either of your contexts about how you do that when the partner or potential partner is hesitant or even unwilling to do that work.
Mm-hmm. I have an example, and remember, I'm a vessel. So when I say I always feel bad about that because I was fortunate to build a very strong team. Strong teams are super important. People who staff you, people like the people who clean up my office so that it's not crazy when I come in here. All those people help the success of Austin. So I have a great example. I think you have to be vulnerable because hard work is really a part of being vulnerable. It's just like in any relationship. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be open. You have to be open to rejection. You have to be open to people being unkind, people not understanding. And during COVID, before the CARES Act money came, we were challenged because we had to close our residence hall. So right out right spring term, we're losing tremendous amounts of revenue. So I met with a pastor at a local United Methodist church there and was very vulnerable with her. My worries that my students were not going to be able to persist, that we were not going to be able to make our payroll because of the loss of all that revenue, having to close the residence halls. And she was very open to my vulnerability and my concerns. And that was me opening my heart up about genuine concern about my students and what was going to happen with them as a result of COVID, as a result of the pandemic. And it worked out. They paid all the back balances of our students so that they can go and persist to re-enroll that next term. And I was the crying president when she called me to tell me that I had the ugly face cry because I could have put on a front that, we have this all together and, I'm Houston Tillison and everything's okay. But that moment of vulnerability and truly sharing what our challenges are and what our needs are and what our weaknesses are in that moment, I think really helped to lean into her taking it back to her congregation and then considering to do that. And that was a major investment. And that got students to persistence. And then the CARES Act dollars continued to help us, but that really got us to that next step and for us to be able to really make our payroll. Because that was a large investment in that particular moment.
Madam co-host, I see your hand. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm curious where you thought maybe being from and leading and representing and guiding this team from a smaller institution was a great opportunity for you, and where you might have wished and looked to your neighbor to UT Austin and thought, if only. And maybe you're experiencing some of the same with the scale of Newfields.
So I've never had an if only experience with my sister institution there, University of Texas. I'm on a mission, and my mission is to build beloved communities. And I was, I applied for a position that I did not get because people were saying, well, she's coming from a small institution and we're big and she can't lead that. In hindsight, that wasn't the fit for me at that time. And we're being recorded, so I won't use like the colorful non-presidential language that I, thought in my head at that time. But Newfields saw something different in me about when you can lead a small, fiscally fragile, minority serving institution in a city like Austin. It's like the Titanic. I'm the queen of the world. I could do, you feel like you can almost do anything. And I think, and you can't, I'm still humble. But realistically, I never had that experience of wanting to do something at a bigger institution because I'm on a mission and I want to have impact. And I don't think that the University of Texas at Austin has the same mission that schools like Houston Tillison do. And I'm a better fit for those kind of institutions. Now here, I'm at a very large institution, very large, very complex institution, but it has a phenomenal mission. And it's the mission that I'm attracted to and the opportunities that I'm attracted to and the things that I believe we can do or will do here at Newfields under my leadership to build a really good team of people that are willing to do the hard work and really move into the complex conversations, the courageous conversations. I mean, you have to embrace the challenges and be willing to work through them together.
Yeah, thank you. I think your response gets more to the heart of my question than maybe I clearly stated, because I think coming from small institutions, coming from HBCUs and small organizations, my experience is wherever those are in the world, there is that heart. And if the heart isn't in the mission, it really impedes that opportunity to accomplish some of the things that you're talking about. So
you have to be super mission focused. When you find an institution that's not focused on its mission, in fact, administrators can come to college, come to work in the morning at 8 o'clock, see no students, put your head down and work all day and leave at the end of the day and don't see any students. Mm-hmm. So you're not connected to the mission, and you have to be connected to the mission. You have to remember who you serve. I think all administrators should teach a class because you get to, keep your finger on. Now I teach at University of Texas, ironically. I teach a class about social justice in higher education at UT and their doctoral program. And it helps me stay connected to the mission. And it helps me stay connected to, what I believe is important is to pour into people who will lead our institutions in the future. I will always stay connected to higher education, particularly historically Black colleges.
We are reaching, unfortunately, the end of our time here together in just a few minutes. This could go for much, much longer. I want to make one reflection, and then I want to turn it over to Beth to offer some closing thoughts, and then we'll come back to you, to Madam President, to give us a charge as we head back to our packed calendars that I know everyone has after this. You've talked a lot about the power of vulnerability and heart work. I've also been deeply impressed, as I've had the opportunity to talk with you before, about also knowing your worth and your value and that of the institution. And I remember, and I won't use names and I won't use company names, et cetera, but I remember very specifically a discussion on a panel that you were on around where you went to a company that had a specific thing that your students needed in that moment. And what the company offered instead was, can we embed an executive to help you run your organization? So you went with a need and they heard you need help managing your ship. I'm just holding that up in this space because I think often partnerships need to be partnerships, and we have to talk very directly about what that looks like. Is there a quick reflection you'd like to offer about that?
Mm-hmm. It was insulting, first of all, because you're making the assumption that the problems and challenges we have are because of lack of leadership or lack of understanding how to manage an institution. It wasn't. It's because of the population that we're having to serve. So my reflection in that is to not show I cannot show my anger and frustration in that moment. And that's very hard when you're passionate about something. And I learned about myself in that moment that I could manage my emotions and continue to pursue the partnership, because we still needed them as a partner. We still wanted them as a partner. And it didn't pan out the way that they anticipated it would, but it did pan out the way that I anticipated it would, and that we did eventually get them as a partner because they started to see the mission and started to have more confidence in us. But they took us through the ringer, as Michael knows. We had to prove ourselves first, all the way to asking for our financials and everything. So it panned out, but it's very frustrating that when someone thinks that you are less than as an institution because you are of color or because you're not well endowed.
Yeah. I think in this space of town-gown partnership, true partnership respects what everyone's bringing to the table and holding that up. And so with that, Madam Executive Director, Ms. Bagwell, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I wrote down some notes, and the things that really stuck with me were, first of all, you're very mission oriented, and we recognize that and we appreciate that because there's so much work to be done. And I consider myself an ally to that work. So you call on me anytime. What a privilege to be here. I love, we actually came up with a hashtag, campus and community, hashtag heart work, from the conversation that you had today. I love the analogy of the donut, which is your perimeter around you, and that you really, and the intellectual heartbeat. Those are the things that really, and then you said education is a great equalizer. My parents never used that term, but that's such a nice way to put it. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here today. You have quite a story to tell, and you are definitely a thought leader, and we really have enjoyed you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here.
For those who are still with us today, we have a link that Poppy's going to put in the chat for you to do a quick survey from today, so we know how to prepare for our next edition of this. And I would just like to turn this back over to you to close this out. Thank you. I'm sorry, Dr. Burnette, you were going to leave us with your thought.
Give us your charge, Dr. Burnette.
Charge.
My charge is that hashtag heart work. These aren't jobs, these are assignments. This is work, and serving your community, your town, serving your community is a part of your mission. It's a part of the initial definition of what higher education does. So stay focused to that and understand that you are in that donut, doing that hard work in that donut.
And with that, we are going to close out our first episode of the ITGA Late Night Lunchtime talk show. This is where the credits start rolling at the end of the thing. We really appreciate it, Dr. Burnette. Thank you, Krisan. Thank you, Woody. Thank you, Poppy. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Susan, and everyone who helped make this happen today. It's been a great first discussion. We'll take this recording. We'll share it with membership. Krisan, anything you want to offer as we close?
Just full of gratitude, full of excitement, and full of great quotes for the week.
Thank you all. Enjoy your